Oh, yeah, there it is. Here we are, episode 20. Today, we are doing Mihai Leafy. We're talking about crypto investments and the state of crypto. We're going to have him on here in a second. Let me start it up, and it goes something like this. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I hope that you're doing well, and I hope that wherever you are is doing good for you. My friends, it's me, it's Paul Carpenter. This is episode 20. I'm having Mihai Leafy on. I'm excited. Here we're about to start the show any second now. He should be joining as soon as he does. Of course, we'll join him in. I hope you can see that we have a new thing with a little background and cool art and stuff. We're moving up in the world, folks. So we're starting up now. Here he is, Mihai Leafy, and he's about to join in now. Excited. So it should be up. There he is. Here he is, Mihai. How you doing, man?
Doing great.
Good. Am I saying your name correctly? Is it Mihai?
Mihai, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Good. I'm happy I got that right. So, how did we meet? How did you do? Because I've seen your photos, I've seen your profile. It seems like I've known of you or seen you in the crypto circuit. I've been very heavy in the crypto circuit for the past 2 years. I was in Miami, and I even have an NFT project I'm part of right now. But how did we get to know each other? How did you meet me?
I think it must have been like Art Basel or Bitcoin Miami or NFT Miami or ETH Miami or
Well, one of those, right?
any
Sure.
of the other ones. I mean, I think I think you and I spend our lives on conferences as much as anything else. So sometimes it gets to be difficult to remember. But
Yeah.
yeah.
No. You looked really familiar when I went through your photos. I was like, oh, I know him. I've met him before. This is so intense. So Mihai, if you would not mind, for those who are watching, who are you? What are you about? Where do you come from? Give us a little thing, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, of course. My name is Mihai. I've been in crypto for about 7 years. So since the bull run of 2016, 2017, working full time, helping tokens get off the ground, writing tokenomics, business models, write papers, launched a crypto exchange called deepwaters.xyz, which sadly doesn't work for KYC in America yet, but can serve our European and Asian customers, and have been trying to understand where the industry is going to go over the next couple of years, because I think the bull market is definitely coming back. Bitcoin is halving in April. And I wanted to pick your brain today and see who in the audience has any comments as well in terms of what we are going to expect and what we are going to see starting in April to September 2024.
So, I immediately run to so many different things that I even mentioned to you before we even got on, where, look at what's happening right now with the state of investments and what's happening with China and Russia wanting to separate the dollar on some level.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also go immediately into the idea of IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and how they're wanting to gather a good 100 so on countries to go into the crypto market. So that's the first thing that pops into my end. We have someone came in. Sam says, Mihai is amazing. Looking forward to this full podcast and learn something valuable. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Sam. So what do you think of those things? I mean, that leads a little bit towards conspiracy theories and towards this 2030 agenda idea. So my question to you is, how do you feel about those things? I mean, there's a lot of news about it right now, but how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're starting to see finally a lot of regulation that is starting to make sense. We're still a long ways away from Basel IV, and you can call it a conspiracy if you want, but I don't think it's surprising that the heads of major financial institutions across the world are trying to get together to understand what's a set of standards that we can all abide by. I think a lot of people in the industry have been adequately disappointed by how well the traditional finance industry has been able to put a clamp on privacy tokens, their liquidity, their transactability. Not that you still can't over a lot of DeFi protocols, but just as an example of what I think the crypto industry is afraid of from the TradFi guys. And there's real reason for some of that fear if we're looking at Fed now, the CBDC evolution, not just in the US but across the world. I think again uh, that's a reasonable concern for folks to have within our industry because of how directly opposed it can be to many of the ideals that the crypto ecosystem has been built for. At the same time, um, what I've seen in the last conferences that I've attended, whether in Zurich, in New York with Masari, in Paris with ETC, there's a much larger than ever before slice of the industry that is looking at real world assets. Mm-hmm. So again, going back to the IMF, I think the BlackRocks of the world, and I'm seeing Citadel and BlackRock are doing a crypto exchange. Like those guys don't care about Ethereum, right? Like that they're not there saying, hey man, if we have the exchange, we might make 17 bips a trade on our beach room. Like that's Citadel doesn't. I don't think they would care.
That was my
if it
next
wasn't for
question.
That was my next question. Since you brought up, Vanguard, Citadel, BlackRock, all these companies that are now, I think BlackRock just put $50 billion towards buying assets, and that's like financial homes from people. So we're moving into this weird place where, sure, we'll forgive your debt here for your college, but you're never going to own a home because all these corporations are coming in and buying it out on some level. I mean, on a big level, that's what's happening here in the United States, where people are being bought out from their homes. And if it's happening here, it's only a matter of time before it happens everywhere else, right? Because we're always like the testing bed. The United States is like the testing bed to see if something will work. And then we go out to the world and proliferate that concept onto everybody else. So I feel as though, I don't know. I'm me personally, when I see the future of what I'm looking at right now, the way the world works and the way that most people are not standing up and fighting against the system, right? In some way, shape, or form, right? Nobody's really going out there and protesting and really making a thing of it. We might be bitching and complaining here and there about this group or that group or this thing or that thing, but that's just, in my thought, is socialism that's turning into communism, because we're trying to force the destruction of the United States is the idea. That's what I see happening. The destruction of all these ethics and morals and ideas that are now, it's just like free form, everything goes, break down the family, break down the father, take away the idea of even mother, to now where we have the idea of where we call them, what is it, bearing children, a being that bears children or something like that, because now men can have children. I mean, I listen, I'm okay with everybody's doing their thing, but when we start changing the sociological structure of things, then we're also talking about finances within that sociological structure. Everything just starts to fall apart at the seams, and nothing seems to have a place to hold. I see the future being a bunch of rich people who are technocratic, religious people that say, we give you what we believe you deserve. And the rest of you who are not smart enough to play the game, you can stay down there and you can be down here watched by our awesome, Chinese government, watch your every move, social credit system. If you don't follow the social credit system, we take away your money. I totally see all of it happening. My question to you is, because that's way out into the distance. I'm talking maybe 10 years from now. Do you feel that on some level, I've been having this conversation a lot, by the way, and the conversation is kind of a dualistic approach towards futurism. There's a part of me that's saying like, wow, this idea of transhumanism, living future, all this stuff is very cool, yet at the same time, it feels like it's a jail cell. It feels like it's not real. It feels like it's not. So there's like this weird kind of thing that I'm going through. And I'm trying to have people like you come on to give me a better view of the entirety, right? So, and I'm getting different pieces from each person. I guess my question to you is, how do you see that happening? Or do you see that happening? Or do you feel that everything I just said is a big conspiracy theory that's not really that real?
No, I mean, like, I think the US is made up of 50 states, right? And Florida is probably the closest you get to like anarcho-libertarianism. I'm calling you from Massachusetts here, here for the week, and I grew up in Cambridge, and it's just a very different relationship to the government, to the local government, to the state government. Like there's a there's a certain layer of trust, and I'm not saying there's no corruption in Massachusetts. God knows there is. But there's a layer of trust that's very different than when, people in Florida or some other states talk about their politicians. I just got back from Switzerland a couple weeks ago, and I found that a system of government that I really appreciated, because basically, if you can get 100,000 Swiss to sign the dotted line, the government just calls a referendum, and then as long as the question doesn't get posed again for the next 5 years, like it's basically a DAO. The whole country is basically a DAO.
Wow.
So, there's uh, governments and companies are just organizations of people, right? So, you know, um, you can organize them in a variety of ways, and I really like that concept of, hey, do we want to spend more money on street cleaning? Do you want to build another railroad? Like, just, let's all just call a fucking referendum. Like, um, there's there's a lot of independence in those cantons as well, which also reminded me a lot of the U.S. That one thing I really don't see a lot of Americans doing is just leaving. Like the power of the American passport is so big overseas. Your ability to like find work, like, hey, you want to, have healthcare and like parental leave and like a nurse that can help take care of your child. Like, guess what? Move to France.
Yeah.
Like you can. Like if you're American, you'll find work. They'll be perfectly happy to have you. Like it's not going to be easy, but like my parents moved to this, to North America with two kids and $2,000 in their bank account. So like are you a single person? Uh, Not that hard. Like actually, absolutely not that hard.
A lot,
Um,
a lot of people don't recognize see, the thing is about America, though, unfortunately, at least from what I've seen in the inside states, and mind you, there's not a lot of people that live on the inside of the United States. I think 3/4 of most of America lives on the coastal area of the United States. But even so, those who live on the coastal and even those who live on the interior rarely leave their own home or state. It's mind-boggling to me, that you're like I've met people and they live on the inside of the country and they've never seen the ocean. I'm like,
yeah,
it's 7 hours in that direction. Start driving, bro. What's wrong with you? Like, why wouldn't you? Like, and it's this mentality of like, I don't need to. I've got everything I need here. I've heard that from people who live in Manhattan as well, in New York. Like, I've met a 25-year-old woman who had never left Manhattan, had never left the island.
yeah.
And I'm like, you never have left Manhattan. She was like, why would I need to? Everything's here. Everything I could ever want is here. And I'm like,
To be fair, that is the one place where you do get in fact to say that. Like that, Manhattan, Dubai, Singapore.
yeah, but still,
There's
you
a
would
couple
still want
places in
to,
the world.
you would still want to go to Miami Beach and see a beach, or go to California and see Hollywood. I don't know, go to Egypt and go see some, something. It's not like you can't bring the pyramids to, to England, or you can't bring the pyramids to New York. So,
I mean, they
but
sure try.
let's get back to, because I'm really interested in this idea of the wealth gap that is being created, and how do you feel that in the next little bit of time with robots and with with artificial intelligence, do you feel possibly that the artificial intelligence will make things better for us? In the sense
Yeah, I mean,
that will there ever be an AI? This is just an idea I'm having. Will there ever be an AI that goes, "Hey, those rich people are really hurting the rest of them. We gotta put the brakes on the rich people and start helping everybody else." I know it's a little crazy, but do you think that might happen? That we're headed towards something? And then, if that's the case, do you think that those who are wealthy would want to keep that as quelled as possible within the ideology of the norm, so that people don't uh, think those ideas?
yeah. So I think there's a lot of misinterpretation about AI, and a lot of discussion is very almost competitive, right? And I think the real answer here is to be collaborative. So what do I mean by that? Basically, if you look at chess, the um, the best players in the world are neither human nor AI. It's a combination of the two. A not the best, but the second best AI paired with somebody who's under the rank of grandmaster, just on the cusp, will whoop the ass of the best AIs in the world and the best humans in the world. So it's a very um, I think it's a very interesting world that we're heading into, and it's definitely accelerating. And I would call it the difference between the educated and the uneducated, right? I think that distinction between rich and poor, there's still a level of meritocracy in America, but that meritocracy is especially with tech enshrined in education and experience, right? So is it possible to do it without the college degree? Of course it's possible, right? You can have the experience, you can learn to code on your own, you can go to hackathons, you can get hired by a startup. Like there's still a path, um, but with the advent of ChatGPT, we're looking at another layer of commodification of talent. And so if you're looking at a US perspective in particular, resources for retraining in this country are scant, very scant, um, especially for adult and continuing education. So that's really what you're looking for when you're talking about, retraining, let's say a truck driver when the trucks finally start getting self-driving, which is not for a while. I think that's pretty clear. It's not,
Five,
well,
5
this
years.
is where the
I
regulate.
have. I mean, at the rate that we're going, we'll have ChatGPT 5 in the next year and a half to 2
No, the
years.
technology will be there. I'm not disagreeing with that part.
Oh,
I'm saying that you have to get the thing through Congress, and you have the truckers union. So get get the thing through Congress. Good luck.
yeah, but I mean, look at for instance, like the drone company that's in Africa, South Africa, I believe, is where they are.
Right, but the
And
drone company isn't fighting against like the union of air pilots that controls a non-zero amount of the politicians in the country, right? Like
totally agree.
the
Totally
Teamsters
agree.
are like the union, right? It's them and the auto workers that are like the biggest unions in America.
So
If you kind of like,
you believe, and that's a great point actually, that all of the unions, i.e., like the writers' union that's happening right now, like the car union that's breaking down right now, where people aren't working and they're
no,
closing down all these other locations. Um, what you believe, and what I'm now coming to understand, is that possibly the older generation that's holding on, we have to wait for them to fully kind of go away, and that's going to take this process of them fighting tooth and nail. No, we need our jobs. Oh, we need this. Oh, nah, 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 nah. And that's going to be the next fight that we're dealing with over the next 5 to 10 years
right.
of everybody. How are we going to get paid? What are we going to do when we don't have jobs? The robots are doing this and we're not. Blah, 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 blah. All of that becomes a big tumbleweed of yeah, I totally see what you're saying. And I see how now what you're saying is that the process of allowing the robots and and when I say artificial intelligence, I mean general artificial intelligence, right? So something way past the ChatGPT 5, something that's extremely intelligent, 5,000 times one person kind of ideology, right? And I don't see that being very far away. I also don't think that possibly maybe these people who are very rich already have this ability and already have this technology. We're talking about the DARPA or the back end projects from the government, all of that.
I mean, I
Um,
would assume the Chinese government would have it first because they have the most data. It's the most centralized data repository in the world.
right.
So if AGI is going to come out of somewhere, it's just as likely to come out of China as it is out of DARPA.
Anywhere else, right? Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure. Yeah. What do you feel of the? And I know we're supposed to be talking crypto. Please forgive me. But how do you feel about the war, if you want, the fight that's happening right now with the crypto? I think you mentioned it a bit, and you also mentioned something about the commodification of things. Now, are you talking about the commodification of everything?
No, I was saying the commodification of labor. So ChatGPT is making it easier to write code, therefore, but I mean, a lot of code has been copied and pasted from Stack Overflow to begin with. So it's an increase in efficiency, but um, I think talent is never going to go away. So um, yeah, and when you're
You think
talking
talent
about
is intrinsically something human?
nah, going
It says
cashless,
Sam just came in. He says, "What are your thoughts on cashless? Do you think we would go cashless in the future and use crypto wallets, and how that will benefit the government and banks?" But just to get in there, Sam, before he jumps in, I believe, and I've heard and I've read some articles that the government, the United States government in particular, spends way too much money creating the money, distributing the money, and then destroying the money. And that if they were to be able to take all of that away, they'd be in a much better place. So I don't know. How do you feel about that? Are you with me?
hello?
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I
Yeah.
think I
Sorry.
cut
So
out there
what
for a
I was
second.
saying is that I've been reading articles about how the United States government says that just the creation, the distribution, and destruction of money is so expensive that taking that out would make a grand change. And so Sam was asking, what are your thoughts on cashless, and do you think that the world will go there?
Yeah, I mean, we're already there for, to a large extent, right? A lot of the things that we're experiencing in the day-to-day life are cashless. We use cash very rarely and increasingly so. So I don't think that there's a major difference there um, with blockchain, except for, and this is where I'm going back to the real world asset thesis. Um, like I think the dream is really to be able to spend gold or barrels of oil or Apple shares at the cash register, right? And have that level of immediate liquidity to non-dollar assets. I think that's much more interesting. Is hey, can I spend my euros at the grocery store in New York with no slippage, right?
Mm.
Um, so while obviously I admire Bitcoin, and I think there's a lot of incredible philosophical benefits that have come out of that, and that have inspired engineers across the world to build better solutions. Um, I do see also just a deep usefulness in merging the power of the technology in and of itself, the fractionalizability, the traceability, the transparency, now the speed of execution. And I want to see what real world assets can be tied, and what the world in which we can choose what is value to us.
Mm.
I want to see what that world looks like, because when you're talking about um, a lot of people in the US that don't believe in the US dollar, right? Because that's been a frequent topic of conversation when it comes to crypto, when it just comes to general people discussing the economy, etc. Well, what else are you going to use? Right? How are you going to use it? Right? And I'm not saying like you need to use Bitcoin. I'm saying we need infrastructure that provides you with options. If you're an Apple fanboy and you want to keep your entire wealth and everything you spend in Apple shares, you're technologically, it's not so difficult to build that kind of mechanism. The question
Mhm.
is, how are we going to get there from a regulatory perspective, and it's probably going to be the big guys like your BlackRocks and your Citadels and your Vanguards and your Fidelities that are going to really get there first.
So then, yeah, then that leads me to the next question, which is that in the direction of what you think they want? Because it doesn't seem like it would be. It seems like it would be much more this technocratic ideology, like we talked about earlier, where they control everything and they even control the information. I was reading a book recently which talked about how people used to control the world, if you will. And it
Mm-hmm.
was first who had the most land. The person who had the most land would become the king. That person owned everything, and then everybody would give to him because he was basically the owner of everything, right? Then the next was who had the biggest machine, who had the biggest tank, who had the biggest atomic bomb, so on and so forth. And leading into
Mm-hmm.
this new phase, which is who has the most information. And that leads me to the question of, have you heard of download now and decrypt later? And what do you feel that that is part of the process? Do you feel that they're going to go back and say, hey, we found your Google search on this, that, and the other if you don't follow suit and become one of the Borg? We turn off your cryptocurrency. I mean, that's a very easy possibility in the future if we're talking about these same people like a Vanguard, like a BlackRock, that just don't care, that they only see
Mm-hmm.
the bottom dollar.
Right. Mm. So I'm not I'm not sure what the counterpoint is in terms of, it's a company. Of course, it only sees the bottom dollar. That's kind of what our whole society is built on, right? They have a fiduciary responsibility. They're legally obligated. Um, I've seen a lot of um, a lot of stuff that's happened in crypto that is very much, people chasing the bottom dollar. Um, and they're just tend to be dumber and more short term about it, honestly, compared to, when you look at a BlackRock or a Blackstone portfolio. I mean, that thing's supposed to last for 20, 30 years. They're talking real estate, there's real due diligence. Like, how am I going to do diligence on pictures of a frog? Like, yes, it's a famous frog, so what, am I going to use sentiment analysis? Well, I guess sure, right? Like, there is a method, but it's an incomplete method, right? Like, there's no real circulation there. So what I think is really important to think about, um, is how we are going to structure a set of rules and a set of rails that enables our side of the industry, the, the more, let's say, the freer side, right, of crypto, where you're looking
Because
at,
here's my question: does that even exist in the future? If we're talking about,
yeah.
like you said, the BlackRocks and the Vanguards, but then does that end up making those people who don't want to be part of the regulatory or the part of the, they want to still be the Bitcoin ideology, which is I have my own money, I have make my own choices, I get to be free in this world. You don't get to tell me what to do with my money or who I get to send it to or who I get to buy from. I want to be able to, I mean, that's the ideology of Bitcoin, right? So that you don't get to find me. I get to send money to whoever I want. I don't need to be out there with everybody knowing who I am, on some level, right? Unless you're doxxed with your wallet and so on and so forth. And all of that could be a whole other conversation. But the idea of it is not to be involved with a fiat currency and a government in which they are, in essence, bolstering the dollar or whatever currency through debt, and us having to pay that debt through our children's 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 children, right? That's the overall idea of Bitcoin. Tell me I'm wrong.
I mean, like, it goes back to what is debt. I think debt is probably the most formidable source of value and of resource allocation that we have, aside, like, even more so than the markets. So yeah, I think to some extent, there's a level of weakness in the lack of debt possibility within Bitcoin and within the crypto ecosystem, because there's no money multiplier there. Inversely, when we've seen money multiplier effects being applied, we've seen them being applied, let's say, very liberally, right? So no, you can't print money at that speed either. Like, um, I really like the way Tether does it, for example. Like, if you're going to print money, like, that's the way you really leverage debt back into fiat. And if you think about what they do, right, like prices of crypto go down, therefore everyone's exiting, therefore the price of Tether goes up temporarily. They mint more Tether, right, and it's backed by government debt, treasury bills, sovereign debt, right? So um, if you look at how much debt there is in the world, like, there's what, like 70 something trillion dollars worth of global debt. Like, it's, who do we owe this money to? Mars? Like, you know? So the system of credit and debt is more about the flow of money,
Yeah.
right? It's not about where the money is right now. It's promissory for later. There's an understood failure rate within the system. Different societies, different regulatory ecosystems have different tolerances for risk, right? And different investors have different appetites for yield. So I think one of the most fun aspects of being in crypto for this long has been that level of jurisdictional shopping, where you're really, every time you're trying to start a company or a project, you kind of think, hey, which of these 5 to 10 countries could I go to? Who's offering me the best deal? Who's just signed a new tax treaty? Um, there's there's a level of freedom in being able to do that that is very much unheard of from an entrepreneurial community, especially as a whole, right? And especially one that is this big. And we've seen the economies of entire cities being changed as a result of this. Manila and the NFT craze would be one good example, both up and down. Phuket in Thailand has a ton of people who are mostly crypto people. Park Hue in Ubud in Bali. There's construction projects. There's real stuff that has been happening because of this trend of digital nomadism and what you can do with your money once it's truly international.
Right. Right. So I mean, there's this level of optimism that you have that I love. I love your optimism. No, I really do, because when I hear like the things like that we're talking about, like the Vanguards and the BlackRocks, and they're coming in and they're just gobbling up the world one piece at a time, and we're down here looking up on some level, like going, man, I hope I can just get a piece of the crumble of the pie, because that little crumble piece will actually let me live really comfortably. Now my question to you on that one is, and this leads back to a bit of conspiracy on some level, but is that level of control of the money then leading to a level of control of the people? I mean, I'm asking you, how do you feel? I mean, because on some level I hear, like, on your side, you're saying, no, it's totally optimistic, where if I have control of my own money, I'm able to make things happen in ways that they haven't happened before. And you mentioned that, right? There's projects, there's construction going on, and things that are happening in the world today because of cryptocurrency. And yet I'm also asking, does that, how do you feel that interplays together with the vanguards and the people who are, how does that work? And do
Yeah,
you feel
I'm definitely not
comes down
denying
to
that
that?
they have real power and real control over a number of different assets. America is a plutocracy, and the thing that keeps it stable is the fact that the billionaires don't, in fact, agree with each other. They just objectively don't. And there's a bunch of them, and they all have real power.
Right.
And remember that BlackRock was built in the course of one man's lifetime,
Yeah.
right? So, uh,
And he started with absolutely nothing. I mean, if you know the story, it's really quite amazing.
yeah,
The guy starts with like $1,000 or something, and he turns it into like this massive business. So,
yeah,
yeah, yes. I, for me, right? Just for me, there's a part of me that just like goes, but isn't that a monopoly? Isn't that a guy who
sure,
ends up creating a company that ends on some level monopolizing everything? They're on the board
yeah,
of directors for all these major companies. They end up being able to
of course,
push things in certain directions. Um, in essence, these companies become these countries of their
sure,
own.
yeah. I mean, they're definitely larger, especially if you look at Goldman, Citadel, BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard. The big ones are all larger than many countries, you know.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, Walmart has what 2 million people working for it.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a it's difficult to use the same word to describe that business as the coffee shop in the corner with 5 employees. Like it's a different
It's a different
category of
animal. It's a
thing,
different animal.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
yeah. So it's very interesting to be seeing how all of this has been evolving because again, I do think that there's a huge um new coin will emerge and exceed Bitcoin for the next 5 years. Oh, yeah, no.
So, okay, so
Not
let's see. I'll read it. I'll read
exceed
it out.
Bitcoin.
Sam comes in and says, "Is there a possibility in the future that a new coin will emerge and exceed Bitcoin within the next 5 years? If so, what would your views on that identify and invest in early such crypto? How do you feel about? Do you think that there's a coin out there that looks like it's going to do something better than Bitcoin, or do you feel that Bitcoin is the base, if you will. If you follow the trends, right? Everybody kind of follows the Bitcoin's ups and downs, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
do you think that there's something that will overtake the Bitcoin? No,
No,
no.
I don't think so. I mean, like by price, maybe like you saw Yearn back in DeFi Spring, 2020. There was obviously the NFT market had plenty of individual NFTs that went for more than a Bitcoin. But if you're talking about like Bitcoin supremacy, no. Right. Um the best news because I'm an Ethereum maximalist if I'm going to be an anything maximalist just by pure logic, right? Like I
It
think
works better.
um
It's faster. It can do more
no,
processing.
no, it's becoming slowly a monopoly. It's just everybody. It's got all the devs, right? And um, if you look at what's happened recently with the rise of layer twos and now
I
the
was just going to bring that
um
up.
yeah yeah now like ETH V3 that's coming out with Blob Space. I'm still learning a little bit about that, but it's become a very interesting solution to be bringing on the technology of optimism, Arbitrum. It seems like they're using roll-ups. Again, I haven't um, really properly looked at whether they're optimistic roll-ups or CK roll-ups. But it seems like this is a side of the industry that is much more exciting than Bitcoin. Um, I think if you're looking for a thesis for the next bull market, Sam, or everyone in general, what I'd be looking at is a lot of infrastructure. So the layer twos, Solana, Arbitrum, Cosmos, um, Optimism, of course, and a lot of um, the infrastructure plays, right? Like so, Chainlink, um,
How do you feel
Centrifuge.
about XRP and Ripple and
Yeah, that's
FTX and that competition that was going on before FTX kind of
oh, Ripple just signed some deals with a couple of major banks. I'd have to pull up the article. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to be talking about Ripple, so
no.
I completely
It's
forgot.
just it was just because you mentioned all the other and you mentioned a lot of really well known crypto coins and also a couple that I that most people don't know. So the reason that I ask about XRP and Ripple is because they have such a big platform, and they've had so many issues in the past, and also it was the closest thing to them is FTX as a competitor. So how do you feel about that process and that whole thing that they're trying to accomplish?
Um, I think that they're one of the best companies on the market in terms of actually interfacing with Wall Street, and providing a direct service to the banks. Now, is their token related to their value as a security? That's, you know, part of what the SEC and themselves are trying to figure out. Um, I do think that we need a strong Ripple for the whole ecosystem to work well together. And I do think that if it's going to come back, it's going to come back after Bitcoin comes back.
Mm.
Um, well, it's got a ways to go until it hits its previous all-time high. But on the fundamental
Was it
level, compared to last time,
$5? Was that
yeah,
the
something
high
like
end?
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
something
think it
like
was something like that. And now we're like at 50 cents, something like that. So no,
that.
exactly. Like, so it's a pretty reasonable play. Like for anybody that has asked me, hey, I'm invested in Ripple, should I stay in? Like I usually tell them, yes, obviously, this is not investment advice. I'm not suggesting you go out there and buy a bunch of Ripple necessarily, but like there's a good mixture of more fundamental progress than there was when they last hit their all-time high, and good legislative progress in that they've won some of the suits. So I think Ripple is definitely one to keep in your portfolio if you don't already have it.
Chris came in and she goes, I'm a former nurse and a real estate investor with my degrees in accounting, taxation, and law. I'm greatly enjoying this valuable information. Thank you. Awesome content. Thank you, Chris. And thank you as well for everything that you're bringing. Whew, so much. Okay, so now let's get into, because this is what you really wanted to talk about. Let's get into, for those who don't know, investing into crypto, investing into the markets, and how somebody might get involved in that, or how maybe somebody might get in touch with you to get involved with that, or any of those things. Like, how does somebody do this if they don't know what they're doing? They're literally blank to the wall. They have no wallets. They have no nothing. They're lost.
Yeah. I mean, the best advice for any investor is invest in what you know, right? Like, um, just like any market, either take it seriously or don't do it at all. Um, there's no easy fix. Like, what I've been playing with myself has been like a bit of a portfolio of blue chip tokens. That's it. We're in a very um, we're in a very risky atmosphere still, and we will be until April, May of next year. Anything you're buying, be prepared for it to go down 20, 30%. Um,
Regulated.
anything you're buying at this point, like I would hold until,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. So our industry runs on a 4-year cycle, right? 2 years on, 2 years off. So 2020 to 2022, 2022 to 2024. But before that, 2016 was crazy, 18 the crash, 19 most of 20 was bullshit. Then Bitcoin halved at the end of 20. Then everyone got happy. Then DeFi spring, right? If you look before, again, same thing, right? Like 2012, you had Mount Gox, Silk Road. There's always an excuse,
Yep.
right? But it just coincided with Bitcoin halving, and then there were 2 crazy years until Mt. Gox got hacked in 2014. And again, there's always an excuse, but it fits the pattern, right? So, and then 14 through 16 was a lot of a bear market, right? The FBI was coming down on Dread Pirate Roberts. Like, it was a different level of stories, but yeah.
And it's funny. So this is another thing that I want to talk to you about, because it brings up this part of the conversation, which is how much of that is manipulated, right? How much of that is, the George Soroses of the world and this, that, and the other that are pushing against the Bitcoin and making it seem as like, oh, if you use, no, we're talking about the during Silk Road period. The news was like, oh, if you're using Bitcoin, then that means you're on the dark web and you're helping, child predatory children and sex and and drugs. And that's where, I remember when I owned Bitcoin and I told people, and they were like, oh, you're helping the drug dealers. And I'm like, what are you talking about? No, that's not what I'm doing, So,
I mean, you are though, but yeah, by holding and maintaining the value of the asset that is being used for that transaction, you literally are. But yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree too much with the news at the time, because if you're on Silk Road, that's because they're on Silk Road. So they were not entirely wrong. Let's put it that way.
but I meant, but they were making it out to be that if you had Bitcoin, that was where you were using your Bitcoin to make transactions, because there weren't a lot of places and there weren't a lot of websites and there weren't a lot of businesses that are accepting the coin. Lightning hadn't really been invented yet. So, you know what I mean? In the sense of like, so this is my question. Do you feel that is part of the 2-year up and down? As you said, there's markers that show where the news would come in and be like, oh, look, this is bad. This is why you should not do Bitcoin. And the price goes down. And then all these people who are uh, land grabbers, if you will, grab everything they can at the bottom, make the money at the top, kick back out, so on and so forth. And so we have this cycle that goes up and down, but it's also manipulated by the media. And so if it's manipulated by the media, is it not also manipulated by the BlackRocks and the Vanguards and the so on and so forth, which are creating this flow, which is what they want, because they want the ups and downs, because it helps them, as you said, with the flow of money not staying in any one place and being able to create movement, right? I mean, we're not talking about anything crazy here. We're just talking about making money move on a much larger scale and in much
But you don't need that. You don't, I mean, sure, I think at this point, yeah, like, of course, BlackRock's doing an ETF. Of course, they're going to start, manipulating the market to the best of their abilities, and they're going to start issuing press releases about how good Bitcoin is for you, actually, all of a sudden. Sure, sure. Are they going to be a part of the next pump? Yes. Do I think they were part of the 2012 pump or the 2014 dump? No, I think that we were fleas on their windshield and they didn't notice us. If they did, it was as a nuisance, not as a source of revenue,
and the
right? Like
reason
once
that
you pass the trillion, you end up on the radar, not before,
And the reason that
right?
he's saying that is because if everybody, for those who don't know, that the crypto market, it really is only at 1.8 trillion, 1 point
Well,
something trillion.
now it went up to 2.7, I
Okay.
think.
But
That
when
was
we
the
look at
all-time
the
high. Now
world,
we're at like 1.2. It's a little bit
yeah,
less
but
than
when we look at the world of finance, 1.2 trillion is minuscule compared to the other
that. No,
industries and everything else that's going on, which is
it's
why, and I'm
more than
only,
1% of the world's debt. It's significant. It's
well,
significant. I
yes,
don't, doesn't
but
matter how you
the only
slice it.
reason that I said the only reason I was saying that was to give an analogy to your flea, that we were nothing more than a flea on the dog,
Like
because
2014. Now it's different.
right,
Like
once again, in
Dogecoin surpassed the value
2014,
of Bank of America. Dogecoin.
fair enough. Everything. And that's what all I'm trying to do is agree with you and say that yes, in 2014 it was not at 1 point something trillion, it was at like 500 million. So like it was less than a tick.
Yep.
And as it starts to grow, then all these people see the investment, they're like, oh wait, we need to jump in. And that's where all this DeFi money comes in, and all these people that want to do all these new businesses and all these pump and dumps and all this is where that starts to come from on some
Right.
level. Right.
And if you, in terms of the media, like always, always do the opposite of what Jim Cramer says. Like it's still, no, but it's true, right? Like if the media is getting out there being like, oh man, Bitcoin is pumping, like this is going to be the next currency, like you sell everything now, just like now, you know. Why is the Shoeshine guy right telling me which stocks to buy? That was the classic aphorism. It's like that's what I know what to sell because the Shoeshine dude is giving me stock advice. Just sell fucking everything, right? Like right now, I was watching, a podcast on crypto. I forget which one. But basically, I was starting to listen to people being like, I don't. This bear market might last another year or two. I'm like, okay, good. All right, now it's time to buy. Great. People have lost hope. Are we at the end of hope? We are not being like, don't worry, man, this is temporary, and then we're gonna go see another bull market tomorrow. That's it. No more hope. Great.
Yeah, right.
Right. Do we have really good news? Yes, we do. Do we have a lot of price movement? No, we don't. Good.
Right.
Good. This means that this is a reasonable time to invest. Like that, those are the kinds of characteristics that I'm looking for.
So Sam comes in again and he says, what is the difference
No,
between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash?
that
They have huge differences in value as well as it confuses him a lot. So
yeah, that's a question. So this is what happened with SegWit, segregated witness. So basically around 2017, it was Rumble started in 2016, but Bitcoin had issues scaling. And so basically the settlement layer was moved into something called segregated witness, which allowed for the chain to basically be forked. So not entirely, but instead of every node on the Bitcoin chain validating a transaction, there was a randomly chosen assortment of nodes that would then get together as a minority of the total blockchain, but still not a predictable one because they were selected randomly. That would then be segregated witness to the transaction, right? Hence SegWit. So
For
Roger
anybody
Ver,
who's watching right now, my friend, they are so lost and they have no idea what you're talking about. For anybody who's like uninitiated to Bitcoin, they were just like, "What are you talking about?" And a block of it was disappeared, and the tick went over here, and this is that, and how. So if you don't mind, because it's break it down like a child would understand it, because like a bit like some people don't even know what a blockchain is. Like they don't even understand that yet, like because there's some people who may watch this who have no idea what blockchain technology is or how it even works. So
I'm the wrong
and I
guy to
know
watch
that's
then.
super rudimentary for you, but if you wouldn't mind, when you say, because it confused me even a little bit, and I know what we're talking about. You have this thing called Bitcoin and the blockchain that is Bitcoin, and then there are randomly selected uh, sections of
Nodes.
Satoshis of the
Nodes.
nodes, because nodes are not even that's another one that people are like, what are a node? What's a node?
Node's a computer. Right? That's the actual computer you're plugging into the wall that actually confirms the transaction. Somewhere there is hardware, right? It's not Bitcoin isn't based on nothing. It's based on power, like
So,
electricity and
so
hardware.
for those of you who don't really understand Bitcoin, the lamest, most extreme, easiest way I can explain it is there's three people involved in a transaction through Bitcoin. One person is going to send money from one person to another, and that person will receive it. Now, the third person, the third party, will have their computer do a mathematical calculation to agree that this person sent money to this person, and that ends up going onto a thing called a block
A
within
ledger.
the block has many transactions that are happening, right? And there's all these computers that are called miners that are using nodes to go in and do all the math. The people who do the math correctly are rewarded with tokens, i.e., bitcoins, or a percentage of a bitcoin, which then the more that they do these mathematical calculations, the more money they make. And this also represents how much energy they're using with how much transactions are happening. Each one of those is a block that goes into the next thing. That's called the block. And then the next one is called another block. In between is the chain, a block chain of information, in which when you go to the list of all the different, well, let's not call it a list. Let's call it a financial
Ledger.
ledger. Thank you. Forgotten. Thank you. It goes and it shows all of the transactions that have happened, and everybody's ledger looks the same. That is the essence of Bitcoin. Am I right or wrong?
No, you're right. I think that's a reasonable explanation.
So
Um,
from there, how do we get Bitcoin
well,
cash? Because
Bitcoin
that's what you were just.
Cash is just that. That's Bitcoin Cash is the old Bitcoin. It's non-SegWit. That is Bitcoin Cash because every validator, right? A miner is a validator in the essence of the word itself, right? They're there to validate transactions. And so proof of work involves doing that math that you described, right? Doing the work of validating the transaction. And while you are doing that, you're also solving a pointless equation, um, which is only non-pointless in that it shows that you're spending the power and therefore committed to the network, and you are rewarded with Bitcoin occasionally when you solve this complex equation. But your primary job is not to solve the equation. Your primary job is to settle the transaction.
Right.
Right? And to listen from one end, hey, this request came from, this client, right, onto this other client, right? That is, where the provenance is, okay, this wallet wants to send to this wallet. I will approve this because it's coming from the right, destination. There's the right private key, and then everybody else on the chain is going to do the same thing. So SegWit says we're going to have a part of the chain do this instead of the whole chain to save on power and to increase transaction speed. And then Bitcoin Cash and Roger Ver said, no, let's keep things the old-fashioned way. So that was kind of the great schism in the Bitcoin community. And then,
So,
of
Sam,
course,
I hope that answered your question. He says, thank you so much. A great response. Really loving the knowledge and the podcast. So I guess the answer that we gave was more than enough, which is this is what it's about right here, right? This stuff is coming to somebody who's like you, and then having me kind of be the medium between the people who know a lot, the people who kind of know, and then the people who have no idea, right? That's what a podcast is all about. So, where is, we asked this earlier, at least I asked earlier, so how does somebody start to invest in Bitcoin? And I know that you said don't invest in something that you don't know, but this is something that's new in the world. So I guess my next question would be is, where would you go to learn about Bitcoin or just tokenomics in general, right? When we talk about different altcoins, because a lot of people don't understand that, like, Bitcoin is like the granddaddy of them all, and then all of the other altcoins work on the same process but not necessarily in the same exact manner. And so, right, because some of the coins are fiat coins in essence, right?
hmm
We're just going to keep printing this coin and making it, a value, so on and so forth. So that it's very fiat based, whereas a Bitcoin seems to have a certain amount, 22 million Bitcoins, and you can only get those, and then once that is created, that's it. It's like a gold or like a, right? It has some intrinsic value to it that we say, hey, we're only going to have this many of this, and then from that, and once all of these get mined, the money that's being sent back and forth is now only those coins, and that's it. And that makes the value of those coins skyrocket at one point or another, because of the value of the people of using it, just like the dollar, just like the yen, just like any other currency.
Yep.
So some people don't know that. So the next question is, where do you go to learn? Do you just go watch YouTube videos, or do you have a platform
Yeah.
that you feel is like, hey, this is where I learned a lot of info, and I think most people should go there, less scams, less people trying to screw you, blah, blah, blah.
I think Bankless is really good. That's probably the best podcast in the industry, at least in my opinion.
Bankless is the
Definitely
name of it?
one. Yeah, Bankless, Bankless. And Finematics, I can put that in the comments. Finematics is fantastic for quick
Alexandra
videos.
McCarthy says, go watch The Diligence Guy.
Oh yes, that's my little YouTube channel. It's at Do the Diligence.
Oh, is that you?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. I love how the people come in and promote you for you. That's great.
Yeah.
And then Finematics. Finematics is what?
Finematics is really straightforward explanations of how various protocols work. So it's good to start from the beginning. It does get complex a bit. So I would suggest, if you haven't, really dug down the rabbit hole too much, to watch these videos like 2-3 times.
Okay.
Quite frankly.
Now, the next thing I want to bring up is, I just recently read an article that says NFT projects, 90 some odd percent or 99% of NFT projects are now valued at almost nothing. And many of the
Sure.
I don't know, I'm with you. And many of the NFT projects that were like the big ones, and the biggest one we know, of course, is Bored Ape Yacht Club, are now, they were selling, like you were saying, at $150,000, $700,000 for one NFT. So now that those things are at, this ultimate low ever.
Yeah, but they're still like 80 grand. I mean, they're not cheap. You still can't pick up a Bored Ape for like $2,000.
No. I mean, they're amazing. Like but my point is do you see that price going back up? Do you think that this is just a lull, and that the $700,000 NFTs that were 2 years ago are now going to be 1 point some million later, or do you think that they'll just go back to the value that they were at?
I think we had we had a clear thesis in the NFT industry, and that is the majority of art that is being made today and has been for the last 20 years is digital art. And NFTs just are the technology through which digital artists can sell their work. So, there's I think there's a big difference between Jack Dorsey selling a tweet for $2 million, where it's if you look at the actual NFT itself, um,
It's literally a
there's
JPEG. Yeah, yeah,
no, it's not even that. It's a link to Twitter.com, which the
right.
link could die. Right.
At
It's
one
not, it
point in
doesn't
time,
even give
right,
you a
yeah,
JPEG. It's not
picture or
even a JPEG. It's just a link to the tweet. That's all it is. It's not even a JPEG. You couldn't even bother to fucking frame a JPEG.
now. I would like for people who are watching to understand that non-fungible tokens are what is considered a contract. And when I say contract, I literally mean like I'm going to buy a car from this person. I signed the dotted line. They signed the dotted line.
Yeah.
Money gets transferred. That is what an NFT is. So when people are like, hey, I bought this NFT for $100,000 and you don't understand why, the reason they're paying for the picture isn't the picture, it's the access to the information or community or ability that that thing gives, that contract gives you. It's the same thing if I went to Six Flags and I wanted to become a member for the year and get my season pass. I pay a certain amount of money at the beginning of the year, and then from that, I'm able to use that season pass. And now it's on my phone, and I walk up and they go, doop, doop, doop. Hi, Mr. Carpenter. Thank you for coming to Six Flags and being part of our team. And here's your free shirt, and here's your free, like thing. And welcome to the convention of Six Flags, in essence. And so a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people have been like, well, I'll just copy and paste the picture and then I own it too. And people don't understand that there's an actual value to what it is that you're buying. You're not buying necessarily a photo. For instance, in the Bored Ape Yacht Club community, if you owned your ape, they gave you the rights to the intellectual property of that ape, and then you could use that on a product or in some kind of, and there's many businesses that have done that, that use their specific ape to promote a company or a new product. I think there was at one point an actor who got his Bored Ape Yacht Club ape stolen, and he had to pay for it. I think it was Seth Green.
Yeah.
He was
Seth Green,
making
yeah.
a movie or a TV show, and
Yeah.
somebody stole his thing so that it would stop the production of the TV show, which is like, what?
No, which makes sense. Because in the case of the Bored Apes, the IP, the rights to broadcast the image were tied to the NFT. Now there's a significant level of legal complexity behind that, and that hasn't been appropriately adjudicated because there's some argument that makes it basically security, right? Like if you're going to buy a song, for example, right, and you actually get the rights to the song, now that could give you the commercial exploitation rights, which now makes it, potentially, let's say that song is still being operated by Sony Music, right? Now I buy the rights to that song. Well, I'm getting dividends because it's getting operated by Sony Music, right? And me as the rights holder, I get, they get their fee as the operator, and I get my fee as the rights holder. Um, so that has not been figured out elegantly yet. And I
At
don't think it's the
all.
KYC AML
At
that's
all, by the way.
no, no, no. No, but again, like I think if you look at how big those portfolios of music are, you're talking about literally millions of songs, right? Between Warner's and Sony and Disney. And a lot of those are not super worthwhile from a you know uh, exploitation perspective, right? They're not gonna give you a lot of ad revenue if you play them on the radio. But they might have fan bases. Somebody might want that, right? So again, that the mechanic of being able to transact digital goods is different than the exploitation of a hype trend, wherein, oh, I can do whatever and put it up as an NFT and it'll sell. Sure, but only in the hypiest of the hype markets and not long term. If
Mhm.
I'm a famous photographer with a real audience, and most of it is on Instagram, and I travel all the time, it might be more economically efficient for me to do an auction on Instagram because that's where my audience
Right.
is. And then the winner gets the NFT and maybe a printed version of the photo itself as well. Um,
Sure.
and that gives me access to the secondary market wherein if people are trading my work back and forth for an increased value, then I get a percentage. Because if I'm a painter, for
So
example, I paint a piece that sells for 20 grand, then a year later it sells at Sotheby's for $1 million. I don't get anything from that $1 million. I
right,
just got my 20 grand,
right, right. And
right?
that's something that a lot of people also don't that may not know, that when creating your contract in the NFT marketplace, and there's many places you can do this, OpenSea, so on and so forth, that you can actually place that every time that NFT gets sold, that you get a percentage of that sale. And on some level that makes sense, right? So that you as the artist, and you also get a level of provenance of where that art was made, who it got sold to, who owned it, where it went to, where many pieces in today's world, like very old art pieces, the provenance is hard to find. Specifically, the one that was sold for 80 some odd $1 million, which was the Leonardo of Jesus holding a globe. That was just recently found at a estate sale, and they bought it for $300, and then less than 2 years later it was sold for 86 million. So and that goes to say that art is intrinsically non-valuable. It only gets a value that we decide to give to it. Now that next thing, that question then leads to, how do we make this world that we're talking about not like the art world, where in essence it only has value because we pay for it? Or is that exactly what we want? We want a world that says, hey, it has value because this many people are willing to use it, and therefore that's why it has value, and therefore I can use that value as a form of currency. As you were saying, like if I want everything Apple, and I'm an Apple boy, and Apple everything me, and Apple this and Apple that and Apple everywhere, right? And I walk into the store and the only thing I have on my phone is Apple, but I want to buy a banana. I better be able to use my Apple, Apple Pay, to be able to buy the banana and eat banana. And I totally agree with you. I see that as being the future of like consumerism on some level. You choose the big company on some level that you enjoy the ethos of that company, and so therefore you live within the ethos of that company, somewhat like WeChat, right? Where they basically have everything under one, and that's Tencent. For those who don't know the company Tencent, please look up that documentary or find out how Tencent was created, because that's another amazing company that came from absolutely nothing.
Yep.
And became this juggernaut of an absolute monster. For those of you who don't know, Tencent is into movie making, Tencent is into video games, Tencent is into everything. Everything. I mean, it's really intense. And WeChat is part of Tencent. I believe that TikTok is also a part of Tencent. And this is why Trump wanted to take down any access to TikTok, because once again, it goes back to the beginning of the conversation about the future is based on information and who owns the most information, and that will help create the biggest LLM model, i.e. large language model, which will only go towards building up the first artificial general intelligence. What a conversation we're having today. Sam comes in and says, what are your thoughts as an expat? It says, what are your thoughts as an expat on Kathy Wood predictions of Bitcoin reaching over $1 million per coin by 2030? Yeah, what do you think about that? I have my own thoughts of it, and I think that it's just a matter of time. But go ahead.
No, they're fluffing the market. I think there's a reasonable expectation, given that the last all-time high was around 70,000, that it would reach, over 100,000 in this bull market. she's correct in that the next bull market is going to start around 2028 and reach its height around the end of 29, beginning of 2030.
Yep.
Whether it can 10x, I mean, who's going to put in another $5 trillion? Like, where's the money going to come from
So
exactly?
So then my
Like,
question to you is, when you say that where's the money going to come from, and we talked about this earlier, we talked about the CBDCs, the IMF, and all these other
those
countries.
those aren't central banks buying Bitcoin by the trillions. That's
You don't think that that's what would happen? You don't think that that would be the trend for all
CBDC
these
is
different countries?
not. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin. CBDC has nothing to do with Bitcoin. It's a domestic currency that's being put on the blockchain. It's got absolutely nothing to do with Bitcoin.
But
Nor
doesn't it need to have some kind of fundamental something that it weighs itself onto, i.e., the petrol oil dollar that was before a gold
dollar.
dollar? You don't think that they're going to try and find something to hold that to, so
Yeah,
that the
peg to the
people think,
dollar.
hey, it's worth something, or they're just,
No,
hey, it's
no,
just
no.
worth
It's
it
pegged
because
to
it
the
says
dollar.
so.
They're just gonna do circle. That's it. You just peg it to the dollar. You peg it to the Canadian dollar. You peg it to the Mexican peso. You peg it to domestic fiat. That's it.
And that's it.
And that's the point of the CBDC, right? It's just much more traceable domestic fiat that allows individuals to act, or maybe if not individuals, at least companies to get closer to what being a bank is like and unfucking the banking ecosystem. Like there's real use case for CBDCs, but that is absolutely not the same thing as however many central banks would have to get together to purchase $5 to $8 trillion of Bitcoin to drive its price up to $1 million a coin. Like that's inflation ain't that bad.
Right, right,
Inflation
right.
ain't that bad.
That bad, right. Right,
Right.
right. So the chances of it getting to 1 million by 2030 are
If
almost
Bitcoin is at
impossible.
$1 million, we have way worse problems uh, than the price of crypto.
Yeah.
Because bread is going to cost like 20 grand. If Bitcoin is at $1 million, then we're doing hyperinflation, my friends. That's what that means.
For those of you who didn't hear that, that's totally true, right? Because as soon as that happens, the market has to then equal out what the value of something is, and then so other people are gonna, and that's just the way it works. Look at Venezuela with the people who are barrels of money in the street burning it just to stay warm. Right? That's what would end up happening. And so, yeah, Sam, I agree with you that there's ideas of future value of these coins. They're definitely there. I mean, it's happening as we see it. And for those of you who are also wondering, like, why there's such a volatile nature, I don't know of any currency in the history of humanity that wasn't volatile from its inception. It has to find its equilibrium, and it doesn't take, it's not something that just happens overnight. It takes a period of time, 20, 30, 40 years before we deal with a currency that's going to stay around for 100 or 200. I mean, come on,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah.
that's just the way it works. So, so before I go to the next question, I just want to say thank you. Amazing conversation. Love that you're here. Love that you're joining in and all the stuff. Huge crowd today. I know it's only 5 people, but it's a lot more than what I normally have. Although the playbacks have been great, I've been getting great, like 100, 200, 300 playbacks, which is awesome. Yeah. So now we asked already, like, where do people get involved? We kind of went over different aspects of what the markets are, and also a lot of ideas that seem to be conspiracy theories that when you break it down just aren't conspiracy theories. It's just the market bearing the market, right? And like you
Yeah.
said, billionaires who don't agree with other billionaires, and the money that's kind of going back and forth within this flow of the world.
Yeah, and remember that we have our own billionaires also, right? Like the cast of characters is a lot wider than your Bezos and your Soros. Like the Bitcoin Foundation is strong. There's a lot of whales in the crypto ecosystem, and if just the if just the whales within our own ecosystem are agreed that the bull market starts in April of 2024, then the bull market starts in April 2024. Like they, you know, uh, the self-fulfilling prophecies are common in financial markets because ultimately what you're measuring is investment behavior, and that behavior is based on a belief. And so if we have a shared belief that Bitcoin is having and that means something and the market is going to go up, um, then it, almost inevitably does. Like, of course, there's always a risk factor, but they like to look at prices much more cyclically than quantifiably on a price market, right? Like it's just especially in terms of giving advice to people who might not be new to the industry, who might be new to the industry, or trying to think of anything that's a little bit more on the risk mitigation side than the yield optimization side. Um, I would say really think about the cycles and the fact that, especially with crypto, you should get out by the end of 2025, beginning of 2026. Um, there's gonna be a lot of excitement, and there's gonna be a reckoning. There always is.
That's my
Right?
next
There's gonna be an
question
excuse.
for you.
I can't get the excuse.
How do you feel about the people who are doing the investment of going in, spending a ton of money, and then pulling out as much of it as they can, and then going back and just making the market go up and down by doing that type of investing? Or do you feel that that's just investing and that they're just doing what they need to do?
No, I think they're doing what they need to do, and I think again, patterns exacerbate themselves. If the traders are seeing the same pattern, and you see this with huge crashes, right? It hits the stop losses on the way down, right? Like as the price drops, it's hitting all these algorithmic stop losses, and then it's starting to become itself a signal for a good short, right? So all of these forces got had some concept of the valuation of the project around some sort of fundamentals go completely out the window, right? And are replaced by these different forces that are all algorithmic and are going to, in fact, exacerbate whichever, honestly, the direction is. So this is part of what's causing volatility. And I think until we end up with the much more mature type funds like your Renaissance, your Two Sigma, until we have a more diverse uh, ecosystem of quant trading funds, we're still going to see a lot of volatility, especially in the alts, especially in the alts.
Right, right. And do you feel that the idea of the pump and dumps, these idea of just creating altcoins that don't mean anything, do you feel that that's come and gone, or do you think that that's something that's not going to end? That's going to be
That's not
there.
gonna.
That's
I mean,
going to be there. The
it's still
meme
there on the
coins, the
bloody normal
Shiba
stock market.
Inu, the Doge coins, they're always going to be around.
Yeah, yeah, and also like that's still a thing on the regular stock market. So don't hold your breath for crypto being composed of different humans than the humans who have been trading securities and commodities for the last several hundred years. It doesn't matter if they're pictures of monkeys or actual barrels of oil. If you look at the charts, they're all pretty self-reflexive.
Yep, yep, yep. Wow. I mean, what a overall amazing podcast we've had today. I'm so like over like so many things that were so amazing. What else is it that you want to share with with anybody who's watching today, or with anybody who might be interested in learning more? Is there anything else you want to share with us?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about a little project that I have with a few other people trying to co-buy a castle in France.
Wow.
And basically and the idea is not necessarily, put a bunch of money behind my castle project because I mean, first of all, we're not allowed to advertise to Americans, and it's mainly a European project. But it's more to use it as an example of what can be done with crypto and tokens, especially when regulators work correctly, because the um, the project is based in France. French regulation has recently changed to allow us to raise up to 8 million euros from up to 150 people in a security token offering. And so that makes it a lot easier to do what in the US would be close to a Reg A plus, because they don't have the accredited investor requirements in France and a lot of Europe. Like, you want to buy security, my dude. It's up to you. 70% of the French market is invested in real estate. Um, they don't really buy their own equities. So in America, that yes, real estate is a very large component of what Americans invest in, but it's not 70%. Like, Americans like their equities, Americans like their commodities, Americans like their weird derivatives. Like, when I'm saying real estate, I just mean real estate pure and simple, not like commercial mortgage-backed securities or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see how, especially with older buildings where you need a very high level of expertise, which comes with the cost, of course, to analyze what that building is like, what works need to be done, to be able to do maintenance, which is a highly compliant thing, and use a public uh, capital formation method, right? A public fundraising, a crowdsourcing method, fundraising to be able to ultimately protect the history of that country, which I'm not even from. Right? Several of my co-founders are, of course. But I think there's a lot of these kinds of projects that come back to the real world somewhere, right? We're going to use a security token infrastructure because it is the best solution, and it is the one that gives us the most fungibility at the end of the day, the most portability for the security itself, and we can issue another one for every property that we're looking at. And of course, Spain, Portugal, Germany, all these countries have different laws, but they're all coming together along that same idea of, okay, we're going to have a maximum amount of money raised, maximum amount of people involved in the first, in the original offering, and then we're going to allow for more people to be involved and for the asset to be fractionalized as it is put onto a compliant securities market.
Mm-hmm.
In the US, the first one that I've heard of getting the ATS license is Prometheum. A big fan of that project. Been watching them for a few years.
Yep.
They will be instrumental if they can do what it says on the box. They will absolutely be instrumental in bringing real world assets and liquidity to the blockchain in a way that won't go down by 70% when the next bear market comes, right? If there's real estate underneath, if there's gold, barrels of oil, right? We ultimately don't want to have an ecosystem where people are just gambling on the crypto prices. Yeah. Right. Yeah, and Bitcoin is still a fiat currency, right? Like it's based entirely on faith. That's it, right? Like just like the dollar opposed to Bretton Woods. So if you want a non-fiat currency, an actual non-fiat currency, I would postulate that a crypto that is a security that is tied to a pile of gold that physically exists and is in a safe somewhere and is auditable, I would postulate that is not fiat currency.
Right.
It's closer to just being metal currency than US dollar even, right? Or Bitcoin. So that's coming. It's just not immediately around the corner, but that is in fact coming. And I really can't wait to see what the institutional participation is going to be, how the industry is going to change, and how it's just going to ultimately unite with some more stronger domestic interest. I was whipping through my household chores, enjoying listening to y'all this morning. Oh, thank you, Chris.
Awesome. So yeah, I once again, there's this awesome optimism from you, and hearing the way that you express it, I see that optimism as well. As soon as we are, like you said, when we start putting commodities into the blockchain, and the blockchain ends up being based on physical, absolute things, then it's harder for the value of that thing to go down. And it's just economics 101 here, right? We're not talking about anything else. And yeah, I'm excited now because on some level, like what you're doing just in the project that you're doing alone, right? It puts power into the power of the people. where they say, hey, this is a building that we want to make whole again. And we as a group of people with this, NGO and with these amount of people, we're going to put the money up front to make it happen. And we don't need a government for that. We have, our group, and our non-governmental organization, whatever you want to call us, is here to make sure that this castle stands for another 1,000 years. And in doing so, it takes away the power from the controlling factions. And I see the access of that, of being able to have more freedom with your choices of what you spend your money on.
I mean, that's the dream, right? I think that's really the dream. And if you look at what is money, my impression of looking at economics is that what you really see is time, human behavior, and some physical resources. Right? But what you observe mostly around you is not people mining physical resources or cutting down lumber. It's an arrangement of those physical resources done through time and human behavior, right?
Yep.
Somebody polished that knob, somebody screwed that screw, somebody built the machine that was able to lathe that screw into being sharp and then being in your drawer, right? Somebody had to maintain that machine. Somebody had to teach that person how to maintain the machine, right? So you can look at the world as a series of actions, reactions, right? Behaviors, tools, objects, speech, right? I think that's much more consistent with reality as it is and as it is observed, and in trying to look at it as purely as money, right? And again, I'm not saying money is a good metric, right? But I think the closer we get to having the ability for ease of use of complexity, right? Like the financial system is extraordinarily complex. It is difficult to use. So as we're seeing a society overall get more educated, and I would postulate that, between all of this, honestly, all of the good guys on YouTube and all of the scammers, right? Somebody's got to teach you not to get scammed. Welcome to Miami.
Well, I mean, listen, hence the First Amendment, right? Why we have it and why it's there, and so we can have everybody speak their own thing, and the consensus can be like that guy's speaking crazy, and that's why we have, the ability to be able to speak your terms and your ideas, because it'll either coalesce or it won't. Period.
Yeah.
You'll either hit the mark or you don't hit the mark, and if you don't, then you get up again and you keep moving. And like an entrepreneur spirit, a can-do attitude, a move forward attitude, constant. Yeah, 100%. Okay, so what else? What else is new? What other projects are you dealing with? I know you talked about this one in France. What else are you doing that's?
I'm advising a couple of carbon credits projects. I'm advising a fund called Hilman Ventures. So they're working on a lot of ag tech, regenerative ag, a couple of crypto projects that they have in their portfolio.
Cool. Agriculture in general is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, agricultural technology and stuff like that. So they're really, really interesting. Or suggest everyone Google them, Hilman Ventures. I'll put it in the comments here.
Yeah, please do. Please do, yeah.
You can see the projects that are in their portfolio. And there's also a couple that are looking for investment currently. So, only accredited investors, stuff like that. But it's a due diligence portfolio. So I've been advising some of the entrepreneurs that I know that I work with to post their pitch decks, etc., within the Hillman repository. And second of all, I'm working with a group called 360 Green out of Singapore. And they sponsored me to go to the Green Block in Zurich, to Climate Week in New York. So I'm very grateful to them. And they've been working on basically carbon credits, primarily the measurement of carbon capture through satellite, and a couple of other related technologies that are really amazing. Notably something that could be used for mining prospecting, but I'm not going to say too much about that at this point.
Sure. Then that's based on the carbon credits that are being bought and sold that you can use as secondary market, I believe is what you're talking about.
Yeah. So basically, they've got about 1.2 million hectares of assets under management for carbon credits.
Hmm.
So we're looking at turning those into carbon credits using the satellite technology to map out the carbon capture. Some of them have been mapped, some have not yet. I've been talking to a group out of South America called Indigicoin
Hmm.
that's using indigenous land for carbon credit protection again. So they've got about 2 million hectares that they're looking at. 400,000 have already been minted into carbon credits. So understanding a little bit that process better. I don't
Then
know
that's
that.
another thing. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but that's another thing that, as you were saying a while ago, that based on cryptocurrency and NFT projects and these DAOs, like decentralized autonomous organizations, that these things have helped save the rainforest. For instance, when you have indigenous people that are creating land that are saying, "Yo, each one of these NFTs that are bought or however they're doing it." We're saving this and nobody gets to use it, nobody gets to
Yeah,
touch it, saves the land. We're helping each other, we're helping the planet
yeah,
through these initiatives. I know another group of kids that were creating concrete blocks mixed with protein that they figured out somehow, and they're putting these into the ocean to create coral reefs. And that's
that's
an
really cool.
NFT project. I mean, there's so many. I'm amazed at what's happening within the world when it comes to NFT projects and decentralized autonomous organizations and the whole process. I personally love it. Right, it's why I'm involved in it.
Hmm.
I know it's the future. I don't even think. Um, the I guess the thing I'm trying to get at is yeah, I mean, I've asked so many of the questions already that I'm thinking of, like, like I want to know more, but like you've been so diligent with your answers that it's kind of hard for me to come up with new ones. So what do you, on a daily basis, it's as if I was an investor and I had no clue what I was doing, could I come to you and be like, hey, here's 10 grand, go spend it for me, or you don't do that?
So I'm not technically allowed to do that because I'm not an investment advisor, but I could set up an account. There's a way to do that in a decentralized um, portfolio management platform. So I can look that up and put that in. Let me see. Because basically you can do that, but it's got to be you're just basically following my trades. Mm.
Right, but I mean that's something that maybe somebody wants to do, and if they wanted to find you, they could find you through that, and then
Yeah,
maybe
they could.
they could invest that way. I'm just coming up with ideas,
Yeah,
on the fly.
yeah. We haven't. Let me see. Is it Hoop X? Yeah, Hoop X, portfolio allocation. These are, yeah, there's a couple of platforms to do this. I haven't played with it yet, but yeah, definitely be open um to having these kinds of discussions if somebody is interested in trying
I
to
mean,
do it in a way
it
that's
seems as
compliant.
though, sorry, it seems as though you have people that have been here today that have, like Sam seems to want to ask you some questions. Alexandra was here as well. People that already seem to follow you and know you. Yeah, I wouldn't see why I wouldn't want to do that. I would love to. I invested $1,000 in somebody and lost it like a week later, and it was just totally bummed out about it. And but it happens, right? You think you. I thought I was with the right guy. I thought I knew what he was. He knew what he was doing. He's apologized profusely, by the way. Like he was like, you have no idea. It was an accident. Blah blah blah. This and the other. And he's trying to pay me back even. And I felt bad. I'm like, why are you going to pay me back for an investment? I made the investment. I made the choice to know that money could disappear, bro. So like, but you know, that's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess they say, and again, going back to your point, don't invest in something that you aren't willing to A, lose your money, and B, you don't know what you're doing. Just don't.
Yeah.
Um, So if you wouldn't mind, as we start to come to the end of this, we've done a good hour and a half, almost 2 hours today. I don't know if you know, but if you would not mind, could you please reference where people can find you, how they can connect with you, and anything else that you might want to add, or even if you want to keep talking, we can keep going. I'm no stopping points here.
You can find me on LinkedIn at Mihai Dinulescu.
Yep, it's already
There
in
you
the
go.
description. I put it in,
Yeah,
and I think it's the
perfect.
first post or
Yeah,
first comment. If it's not, I'll add the comment now.
I'm pretty
For
easy to Google.
episode 20. I had the most amazing time with you today. I hope that the people who watched also feel the same thing. Like, 'cause this was so filled with so much information, Mihai. I mean, like so much information that anybody who watches this would be more than overwhelmed, and hopefully we quell some of the conspiracy theories that are out there. Some of the people that are like, oh, the people are just taking over, and when you look at it from a point of view where you actually see, you can see that it's just a bunch of people playing chess on a chessboard, and it's not any necessarily big group of people that are controlling the world or this. I mean, granted, yes, is a Bilderberg group thing? Yes, yes. Is the IMF thing? Yes, yes. But are they together? No, they're like two different teams. It's like sports teams almost that are fighting against each other, and each quarter of who can make the most money. I mean, that's basically what we're talking about here. So it's not necessarily some oligarchy of control. Sure, there's probably those people who are fighting against other people who are really wealthy, that are like, hey, you guys are assholes and you only care about money, and you guys are hippies and you only care about the earth, and they're going at it. I'm sure of it. But with all of that, thank you so much, Mihai, for being on today. I had an absolute pleasure with you. I hope you had a good time with me too.
Indeed. Thank you so much. This is
Yeah,
an
man.
absolute pleasure. And yeah, let me know if you want to do it again sometime.
For sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
man. We could do it in the future. I had a blast with you. Thank you so much for being on today.
Cheers. I'll
All
talk to you
right.
soon.
Wow. 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 I'm telling you, bro. 365, number 20. It's like reading a book every day. Like, you get to learn so much about the world by just having other people come in and talk about what they do. I mean, it's like, hello. So for all of you who are watching, thank you so much for staying this long. Thank you for being here from beginning to end. For those of you who are here, let's end it out by going like this. Please go out into the world and do something nice for somebody else. And if you can't do something nice for yourself, it does start with you. Number 2, don't get caught up in all the crazy stuff, because then you end up poopy in your head. And number 3, if you don't mind, please like, share, subscribe. Send this out to somebody who'd like to see it. If you're watching the replay, you can either watch this here on Facebook or you can watch it on YouTube. Thank you all so very much. I hope you like the new background and the new thing we got going. And with that, my friends, I love you all so very much. And I will see you all on the other side.